make a mistake, so I always go back and check if it's live or not. Uh, it usually takes 10 to 15 seconds, and I'm just waiting then and making sure everything is there. Awesome. I can hear myself, which means we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Chai with Heroes from NVIDIA, Data Science Heroes from NVIDIA. I'm having chai in my NVIDIA cup with CPMP, Dr. Jean-Francois Puget. As he'll say, I probably passed the French test again, and I remembered how to pronounce his name. CPMP is one of the highest ranked Kagglers, now triple grandmaster. Last time I interviewed him, he was a double grandmaster, and he had, at that time also finished second in the IEEE competition. This time we're talking about the NBME competition, where also he got a solo gold. Gold is one of the toughest things to do on Kaggle. Solo gold is even harder. CPMP somehow keeps doing it, and we'll be learning how he keeps doing it and what he's been working on. Uh, JFP, thank you so much for joining me again for the fourth time on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
I, I'm always so excited to learn from you. I'd love to first start by asking, since the last time we spoke, now you're, I believe, leading the KGMon team at NVIDIA. What projects are you working on internally, and what's a day in your professional life like today?
Right. So KGMon stands for Kaggle Masters of NVIDIA, and the name was coined by our CEO, Jensen Huang, and he explicitly said it sounds a bit like Pokemon. So we're the Pokemon of NVIDIA, KGMon. Um, so our mission is to showcase NVIDIA in competitive machine learning, so Kaggle, but not only. As of today, for instance, a part of the team is working on a recommender system competition, which is not hosted on Kaggle. Uh, but most of the competition we do are on Kaggle. And then the flip side is to use our modeling expertise to help NVIDIA and its customers. So we provide feedback on NVIDIA toolkits, SDKs, Rapids, for instance, but also Merlin for recommender system, Monai for medical imaging, etc. We also are involved in proof of concept with new or existing NVIDIA customers, who want to use machine learning on something they didn't do before. We also work on internal projects, for instance, on sales forecasting for NVIDIA, internal recommender systems. Also, others I'm not sure I can disclose, but where we build models used internally to improve some NVIDIA products.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you tell us about future GPUs? Anything interesting coming
No,
apart from H100?
I can't. I'm not in the hardware part, and even if I knew anything, I could not say. Of course. So, nice
I
try.
always try to ask that.
Yeah. Nice try. You
I
can.
tried to find H100s at the headquarters. They didn't they didn't say anything.
I know it's and the information about future GPU is not spread inside NVIDIA anyway, so it's protected.
We'll have to wait and see, and then I'll have to upgrade all of this again. um, but coming back to your point, you mentioned the team showcases NVIDIA SDKs on
Mm.
competition, and you also do a lot of stuff internally. Uh, could you please also speak about what's it like to work with all of the grandmasters? They are like one of the highest ranked at the team, and how are all of you working together? Because all of you are also competitors. So how does
Yeah,
part?
exactly. So we are colleagues and we compete against each other many times. So of course we exchange ideas during our job, but we never ever exchange ideas about ongoing competitions, whether we are in same team or not. Well, inside a team, people exchange, but I mean outside, we never discuss ongoing competitions. But once a competition is finished, we share. So, for instance, I presented my solution to NBME last week at our team meeting, and so did Christoph Henkel, Dieter, who did well as well with his team. And we exchange and deep dive on various bits. And then, so working with KGMan, internal projects are like a Kaggle competition. They are a bit, well, they are more real life. So there is more about data collection and discussing metrics with stakeholders and pitching the models, explaining why they are good enough, etc. But we work on those projects as internally. We use, so we're spread. One thing I should have said, we have people in Japan, in Turkey, in Europe, Germany and France, in the US, in Brazil. We're not a large team, right? We are 8 or 9, depending on how you count. So it's a small team, but very spread. So we use asynchronous collaboration tools like Slack and Git repos, internal GitLab or the public GitHub. And then working with smart people is great. And I'm the manager, but I don't manage. I don't tell any of the KGMon what to do. I think that someone who's a Kaggle competition grandmaster knows how to use his or her time effectively. So we only, and the only thing is to report what we do. So they tell me what they are working on so that I can tell management, but that's it.
Thanks for sharing that. I'll just again share the page. So as you can see, if you're from Kaggle, you recognize all of these people. There are a few more. I believe this page needs to be updated.
When I say it depends how you count, there is
Yeah,
also Boyan Tungus. He decided to focus less on Kaggle and do other stuff at NVIDIA. So it's not, he has to no longer be really on KGMon, but we also compare to this. Can you show back? I believe
sure.
the picture we need to update. Uh, there is an additional Kaggle Grandmaster, David Austin, who works on in the autonomous vehicle team, but he's still competing on Kaggle. So he joins us as well in team meetings.
I have the profile picture from
Yeah,
Silicon Valley TV show.
he looks a bit different now, but I really like his picture.
Uh, Sorry, I didn't want to make a controversial comment. I was more curious about you started by saying there's no internal sharing. I wasn't trying to point that out. I was curious about how so many people who are like smartest people in the world collaborate together. I was more trying to ask around that. How do the collaborations happen?
Yeah, but I mean it's there are other companies with large, even larger grandmaster teams, and I guess it's the same there. So I say it because some people sometimes believe we share more, but of course we don't.
Yeah. Um, so coming back to more about your journey, you call Kaggle a legal drug, and you have been addicted for a long time. Uh, How's your passion for Kaggle today? Because you told me a few weeks ago you still spend ridiculous amount of hours. Do
Yeah,
you feel burnout?
so I had a slowdown last year. My mother died. There was we had strict lockdowns because of COVID in France. Nothing. US people don't have no idea what it was. There are countries where it's worse, in East Asia, for instance. But still, I believe among Western countries, France was the strictest. So yeah, I did slow down a bit, but
But
since
you're still like much more active than the average Kagler, even after slowing down.
yeah, but I'm back full speed, I must say. And on NBME, I worked like I used to, so no weekend, no evenings. Then it took me 10 days to recover, but
So why are you still so passionate about Kaggle? If I go to your
because
profile,
I'm learning. So even this morning, I was trying a new package I did not use so far, um, and it improves the model for the project I'm working on or the competition I'm working on. So I won't disclose what it is
okay.
before the competition, um, and in NBME I learned a lot of things on what researchers published in the last 5 years. Deep learning, machine learning in general, and deep learning in particular, it's moving so fast that just keeping up to date is impossible. But if I use a competition to update me on state of the art for the particular use case of that competition. So after NBME, I know what state of the art is for NLP probably, but I don't know the state of the art today for, say, object detection. So I will need to join a competition about it to update me. And in the meantime, NLP will have moved, so it's never ending. It's never ending. So if you want to, I see some Kaggle Grandmaster, they always do the same type of competition. Maybe they don't have as much time as me to compete, so whatever the reason. But for me, it's really a learning experience. So I don't select the competition by the expected point return or medals. I select by the learning I can get. So I often pick competition where I have no clue when I start, or and so sometimes it works out, sometimes it does not, but that's fine.
Just to point your profile out, most often it works out really well. As you can see, CPMP's highest rank was in the top 10. He's still in the top 15. And if you scroll for a bit, you'll keep seeing gold medal, which is a proof of how
I have
often he
done
does
it.
well.
My current rank should be 7 if NBME was final. So I don't know why it takes so much time. It would be 2 weeks tomorrow. But I should become 7 again.
Okay. Awesome. I hope you'll keep climbing. I want to ask another question around that. Have you considered challenging Chris again for first rank on discussions? I always enjoy reading your discussions, as you know.
There is an issue. Now I'm third on discussion. My take is I don't want to spoon feed. I'm not saying that's what Chris is doing, but I tend to share indirect hints more. I share more on the method than on the solution. And this is less popular than when you share a ready to use part of a solution. So no, I don't think I will ever be back at top in discussion, but that's fine. That's fine. I've been there. And Chris is first for good reasons. He has very good things you could look at as tutorials. So they are quite popular, and that's good.
Uh, and since the last time we spoke, you've also become a notebooks grandmaster. Do you plan to continue sharing here and maybe also make
Yeah,
this
on the
golden soon?
data set, honestly, I don't know. I have one regret because I am the one who had the idea of putting rapids in a data set, and I asked Chris to do it. Um, so maybe I would be data set grandmaster because you can create one data set per version. So No, it's a joke. It's not really a data set, right? It's an offline install. Yeah, on data set, I don't know how people get votes. It's something I don't understand at this point, really. No, my focus is on improving my competition rank. Uh, let me be clear. I'd like to be in top five.
And we get to learn constantly, so it's not that you stop sharing. I'm just looking at the NBME competition and you're always sharing some ideas, for example,
Yeah, but
that
there
people.
are I share. You just copy, cut and paste code. I share and improve your. You need to work. I believe that's better, but it's not. Some others share ready to use. Even some people share inference notebooks without explaining how they train the model, and they get tons of votes. So I'm not doing it.
I'm sure we all still enjoy a lot learning from your write-up, so we'll keep reading and enjoying those.
And
Maybe we'll have. Sorry,
yeah,
please.
and I like sharing. It's not that I don't want to.
We'll keep reading them. Maybe we'll have to do more homework, work harder,
Mm.
stay a few nights up, drink a lot of chai, but we'll have to do
I'm
our homework.
drinking tea actually.
Oh, awesome. Fun fact for the audience, I don't think CPMP usually drinks tea. That's what he told me last time we met.
I was teasing you about coffee.
Okay. Uh, there's a comment from one of the viewer. They say they're also a
Thank
fan of
you,
your advice.
much appreciated. That's why I share it because some people like it and say it.
So you mentioned you focus on competitions where you want to learn. Now I want to start talking about the NBME competition.
Mhm.
What caught your interest for this competition? Because in the past also you've done really well on NLP competitions. Why did you sign up for this one?
Yeah, 2 years ago I did well in four. There were four competition in the first semester of 2020, and I got two prize, one gold in a team, and a solo where I was the first silver after gold. So I missed gold by one. So yeah, I had good results. And then I don't know how come I didn't enter any NLP competition for 2 years, 1.5 year. And earlier this year, I entered an NLP competition that was a bit weird with so I forgot the name, but it was more research. It was very challenging. I teamed with Christophe, with Dieter. We did, I think we were in top 50. I don't remember the rank, but not so great. Guangzhou won with two submissions, I remember. So I say I need to update. I'm not. Up, I no longer know what state of the art is. Then there was this feedback competition, but I was busy. I entered an optimization competition that was taking me a lot of time. So I entered feedback, but like 10 days beforehand, I submitted like maybe 3 or 4 submissions only. They were decent for the first submission, but not competitive at all. It's I really need to take. Then there was this Kaggle Days competition. So Kaggle Days is organized by Logic AI, a company from Poland, in partnership with Kaggle. And they are more like hackathon. You have 4 hours. So in 4 hours, you can only do something you already know. I mean, you can't explore. It's short. And there was an NLP competition, and I had 2 ideas. I went for one who was not working that well, and in the last hour I tried the other one, and it was working great. So I say, oh, and I was quite frustrated. I worked 2-3 more hours, and we would have finished second if I had. So I say, no, I really need to do an LP. And then there was this NBME competition that started. So I say, okay, I'm entering this one. I'm focusing on it. I will take the time. I will read papers. I will learn. So I read past winner competitions from feedback, from the Indian character, the Indian language competition.
Chai competition.
Yes. The Chai competition that I didn't enter, but I read the top solutions, and I started exploring, and I started from scratch with my own code, no public notebook, and I had the time to experiment. So I do a lot of experiments. Um, uh, I have my baseline. I change one thing. I train. I see what the CV score, the cross validation score is. I submit, and then I see if it's better or not, and I learn from it, and then I design another experiment. And you need time to do this, so I started the competition in the first week of the launch and worked full time on it till the end.
Do you usually like to join competitions early, or because I know many grandmasters join during the later half and they still perform really well?
So it's you can join. Your question is about joining late, right?
Joining late or early, what do you prefer?
To learn, joining early is better. I would not have finished second if I had joined 1 month beforehand. So I had too much to learn. So it's I can maybe now that I have this update on NLP, maybe I can join late. Say there is a current NLP competition, maybe I will join it late because I practiced a lot on NLP. For image classification, same story. I can join late because yeah, I have experience now. Um, but for instance, I mentioned object detection. If I join an object detection competition, I would join early because I have no clue. I don't know. I can use YOLO V5 for sure, but if you want to win, you need to be able to do better than using a predefined package, right? So
Okay. I found the competition you were talking about, and people know you are usually very straightforward on the discussion. So this was the write up that I found from you.
exactly,
And
that was my conclusion. And I spoke for the team, but I should have said I suck at NLP.
so coming back to when you said you joined to learn new things, and that's why you joined NPME. Once you sign up for a competition, what's your first process is like? So you have a older baseline where you start, and then you go to older competitions to find idea. How are you deciding which papers to read? For example, you did adversarial training in this one, which we'll talk about.
Yeah,
But
because it was mentioned by the winner of feedback competition. So they said they didn't say adversarial training. They said they use, or maybe they said it, they use AWP, comma FGM. So it took me like 2 days to find papers that describe what those were, because if you Google FGM, you don't find the FGM paper. You find I don't know what, but so and I discovered a whole new word that was not mentioned in Kaggle. There was one post 1 year ago about FGM, which was published in 2016, if I remember well. So that's one body of work that Kagglers have ignored. We often brag on Kaggle about being state of the art, and it's true in many cases, but for this, it was not the case. So I spent time, I experimented a lot. Um, it so happened that using a more traditional pseudo labeling, I did a bit better. But still, maybe with more practice, adversarial learning would be better. I don't know.
So
So, no, go ahead.
I was curious about as you found this idea from earlier, how are you prioritizing your experiments and which experiments do you run first? How do you go about that?
Oh, so I'm low technology. I have a, a note file, just raw text, and
Similar to Chris?
I write my ideas as soon as I have them. So sometimes it's not. It's like in the evening during dinner, I think of something. Once the dinner is finished, I write it down. Um, if I have time, I may work on it, but and then each time an experiment is finished, it may trigger new ideas based on the result, and then I look at all the ideas and I select the one I feel is the most promising. So, for instance, if I'm a bit tired, I will select some that do not require too much thinking in coding. If I'm fresh after a good night, I will take, for instance, my when I started implementing adversarial training, it was a morning after a good night, and it was serious coding because all the publication and the code I could find were for classification, multi-class. And in NBME, it's binary prediction. So it's binary cross entropy. No code works with it. I work with mixed precision and I work with gradient accumulation. And none of those codes have it. So I had to explore a lot of things. I'm a bit disappointed it did not help in the end, but I'm sure it will help in the future.
If I may also dig in and ask about what's your usual approach to writing code, like what editors do you use? Do you have music playing? I'm
No,
curious because
I'm low key as well. I use notebooks because usually in competition you don't develop a lot of code. So to me, a competition is not a software engineering project. So I have experience in software engineering. I've built software in Lisp, in C, in C++, professional software. I coded a lot in C++, so I know I managed to avoid Java. I don't like Java. Um, then I found Python, and Python is great to quickly prototype things. And a Kaggle competition is building a prototype, so Python is a good fit. So I use notebooks to edit, to code, and I try to. When I see people share code with function that spans 3 screens, it's crazy. So I try to write code to concise code and modular, one function for one effect, no side effects. Well, if you have experience in software engineering, you can apply them when you prototype still, but the quality is not the same. So I have, for instance, global variables all over the place, which is a bad habit in software engineering. But when you prototype, it's quick. But no, I don't use PyCharm, or I don't know what people want to use. I tried a bit to have a utility library, so Python file I reuse, but frankly, the level of customization required to perform well in each Kaggle competition is such that I prefer to just copy code from a previous one and modify it.
last time we spoke, you were pro PyTorch. Is that still the case, or sometimes do you
Oh
still
yeah, I'm
use
using
TensorFlow?
PyTorch and I'm still learning. First, PyTorch is evolving. and second, I'm learning. So last time in NBME, I learned about autograd because in adversarial training, you need to do several forward and backward pass for the same example and play with gradients. So I learned stuff. Uh, so PyTorch is good. It's not perfect, but it's good. Now still, I'm bugged regularly by data loaders being locked, so freezing. So there are some issues with PyTorch, but in general, it's a good. For me, it's the right abstraction level. I can understand that people who will reuse models more than creating new ones, higher level APIs, Keras, or predefined packages. Uh, for instance, I was speaking about object detection. You have high level packages like Detectron, or I forgot the name of another one that is similar.
Detection.
Yeah, exactly. Here you can use what they have, and you don't need to look under the hood in many cases. Or for NLP, you could just use Hugging Face trainers and auto NLP, and so the level abstraction is moving up. But for me, PyTorch is great. But I will not say it's great for everybody. I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
Uh,
You also are an expert in optimization. All Kagglers know this. Many times someone shares a code in a kernel, or sometimes you by yourself also write very fast code and share it. You share tips on how to JIT code. That's how I first learned. I'm sure many people learned how to JIT code. So do you spend actually a lot of time doing that as well? Are you profiling your
oh,
code, or
that's from my past software engineering. I was working on another kind of optimization, mathematical optimization, a solver called Cplex, and there the speed of execution is what people buy. They buy your software because it is the fastest one. So I always think about speed of execution, always. So I do some benchmarking regularly when it's something I've not used before. Otherwise, I rely on my experience. For instance, for pandas, I have a good idea of what's reasonably efficient and what should be avoided a lot. So I remember was it in feedback? Someone in feedback competition, someone shared a metric computation, and I
it
just
was Rob, I think.
yeah, and I took the code and speeded up by 6 times. I just refactoring a bit and avoiding the most expensive operations. But I do this if you run your code, if your code runs faster, you take less time to perform an experiment. So that's why it's interesting to do it. Um, so for instance, in NBME, for dberta v3 large, uh, my I was training my model in 5 minutes per epoch. I saw people they were training. It was taking much more time. So I was running more experiment than others in a given time frame.
Okay. Uh, Again, I remember there was a discussion and feedback talking about experiments,
Mhm.
and the person. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So the person had compared how there are athletes and average competitors. Athletes have access to strong compute resources. Many companies who love Kagglers give access to them. So again, I'm not making a snarky comment. I'm curious because I have multi GPUs and I always struggle to like maximize them out. Do you plan around that, or like how
Oh
do
yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah. So for NBME, I was lucky to use uh, VMs, so we call them jobs. And they're actually Docker containers with four A100 GPUs. So it's great. I'm not the only one. I saw many competitors mentioning A100 in NBME competition. But yes, I was planning so that those were used at all the time at full capacity. So I could not obtain 100% GPU use, uh, but the GPU were running all the time, all the time. So I knew when an experiment was going to finish, say in 5 hours. So I was making sure that 5 hours from now I had another experiment to start. To um, yeah, we one way to get an edge in deep learning competition is to use your computing resource 24/7.
Yeah.
They should not. They can run 24/7. Your brain cannot, but the machines can. So it's key. It's key.
I was going to quote that because you keep saying that on the forums. The machine doesn't. I sleep, but the machine doesn't have to sleep. Um,
Exactly. So yes. So sometimes it goes as far as I put my wake up in the middle of the night when I know the experiment will finish to launch the next one.
okay.
So I wake up in the middle of the night, look at the results, and maybe I prepare two experiments depending on if the result is positive or not, and I launch them. Yeah, it's we have a limited time in a competition, so I try to use it as well as possible.
CPMP. Chris had shared. I'm curious. I'm sure it happens to you. Chris often wakes up middle of the night. He gets an idea and he starts coding the next experiment. Does
Oh
it
yeah, I
happen
mean,
to you?
oh yes, yes. I mean, that's why I enter one competition at a time usually, because I think day and night I dream about it. It's I mean, it's like I was trained as a mathematician, so it was the same. I was thinking about my theorems and whatever day and night. It's And when I was coding, then as a developer, it was the same. It's Maybe it's a curse, I don't know. But
People in. Sorry, please go on.
it can be tiring. So it's good to do. But even if when I'm outdoor, I go walking, or you can think when you walk. It's only when I was young, I was doing fun board, windsurfing. Yes, windsurfing.
Okay,
Um,
I didn't know this.
and in windsurfing, if you lose focus on what you're doing, you you explode. So that was great to fight this tendency of thinking about whatever problem I work on. Or I was doing ski in at a good level. I grew up in the Alps, so same. When you're skiing, you cannot think about something else,
Hmm.
or you fall. So demanding sports where you need to focus is a very good antidote against being addicted to Kaggle.
That's great advice. I want to point out one website that I really like for anyone interested. They're not my sponsor, but I'm a friend of the founder, and I think they're one of the cheapest options to rent A100 because people are constantly complaining
That's what
resources.
Travis, yeah.
Yeah. So just wanted to share that with the community. It's $1 an hour for an A100, which I'm sure everyone would say is really cheap. So sorry to go off on a tangent. I was really curious about your processes because I know many people around me struggle with like having strong focus. We work for half an hour, then we have to play music or we get distracted. And I wanted to know from your experience, how do you
Oh,
stay
so
focused?
when I say I think all the time, it's not true. I can be distracted. For instance, I spend time on Twitter. That's a good distraction as well. It can be too distracting, even if you get caught in an argument. But yeah, I always had this ability to focus for quite a long time at school, in high school, or yeah, I can focus and forget about what surrounds me. So I don't need to have headset to I and actually I don't understand how people can focus while listening to music. If it's a noise cancelling headset, okay, but if you're listening to music, if I listen to music, I listen to the music. Uh, yeah, so I don't know. I can't explain how to focus, but that's something I do naturally.
Maybe we keep reading your homework ideas, and maybe while doing them, we become a little like you, and maybe we improve.
I
Um,
don't know if it's good to be like me. I think everybody is different, and oh,
as I mentioned always to you,
stay
I'm a
as you
fan. So
are. Stay as you are. It's good. It's good.
okay. Now coming to the competition, I'll start by sharing a kernel that I found. We have this joke in India. I'm not sure if it's true in France, CPMP, where the when the doctor writes the notes, you can't read anything.
Oh
Is
yeah, yeah. You can't. Yeah, same in France. You can't read any doctor.
so the I just wanted to
So are
point
you
that joke.
saying my writing is like a doctor
No,
writing?
no, not at all. I was going to use that joke to share this, that maybe someone found that it's a global problem and they decided let's solve this issue using Kaggle. So the challenge, as I understand, CPMP, I'll explain the challenge. Please correct me wherever I'm wrong. So there are patient notes by doctors where they write really weird stuff in weird language that only they sometimes can understand. And in there they have these keywords that are these annotations that we're supposed to highlight using our models. So that was the main I think it can be called a language understanding problem, if I may. Is that my right understanding?
I would say it's more. I view it, and I'm not the only one. Most people view it as a question answering problem. So uh, notes are like the context, and we are asked to predict where a given symptom is mentioned. So it's called a feature. So a symptom or a feature of the patient. So for instance, the feature could be male. So if there's somewhere evidence in the node that the patient is a male, if so, we have to report where this evidence is. Uh, for instance, if in the text a 17-year-old male has this and that, we should highlight the word male. So in that case, it's easy. So in your example, let me see. Uh, Yeah, you see Adderall. So I don't know what it is. It's a drug for some disease, and the disease looks to have things about thyroid. So maybe the feature is thyroid disorder, and we have to identify all these symptoms. So the person is taking medicine, has lightheadedness, etc. So I'm not a doctor, not an MD, a medical doctor. So we are given examples of the, the symptoms that we have to recognize, like this one. So really, it's a question, and we have a symptom, and we have to find all the occurrence of text that map to this symptom.
Could you please clarify how did so my again, I'm a noob at all of this, so my understanding would be this is language understanding, but you said you converted into
Oh
question
no, it's a
answering.
question answering. So language, why do I say it? Because language understanding, it's a specific task in NLP, and typically it's language so yeah, it's about understanding language, but in NLP now we researchers define specific task in natural language understanding. So the one we have here is question answering. It's really given a text called the context, given a question, what part of the text answer the question. So here we're given a symptom, a feature, which part of the patient note is related to this feature. So and sometimes there is none, and sometimes the person, the MD writing the note missed the feature. There are other ways, for instance, natural language. In France, you're given two texts and you must say if the first one entailed the second, or if the first one contradict the second, or so it's a variant, and there are many tasks like that, and those benchmarks that are used by academics. But this one, the closest is question answering.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. That makes a lot of sense. So to summarize the understanding, you have all of these texts by doctors, which someone has kindly converted from their handwriting into red text, and there are all of these features, that key phrases that we have to understand and point out, and we are being evaluated on how many of these. That's the main problem. There are other fine details as well. For example, there was less labels, which you also pointed out in your write-up, but this is the high level summary. As I understand, that key phrase identification is the problem.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks for confirming that. So, moving on to, how did you approach this problem when you first saw this? What was your first baseline, and how did your solution
My
evolve
first
from there?
baseline was question answering, and I use my favorite. So, state of the art models now are gigantic model with hundreds of billions of weights. I believe I'm not sure because it changes very quickly, but recently NVIDIA had the largest language model.
Megatron, I believe.
Yeah, but there are different variants, and one with like 600 billion weights. But I mean Google and Facebook and who. It's a competition, so every other day someone has a bigger model. We're not using models that large on Kaggle. One reason is further very large, so you need a GPU cluster to even just use them as is. Second, on Kaggle, Kaggle has code competition, and NBME was a code competition. So we have to use Kaggle GPU, which is a P100, to compute the answer to the competition. And P100 are quite old GPU, like 5-year old. Um, so there is no way we can use gigantic models. So we're restricted to models that fit on a single GPU. And for 2 years, the best model for that was Roberta from Facebook, from Meta. Uh, People speak of BERT all the time, but things move. So the first major evolution was Roberta, which is really, really better than BERT in every dimension. And for 2 years, Roberta was the best model used in all Kaggle and LP competitions. But recently, Microsoft came with a variant called dBERTA. Um, for people interested, the main difference is it's a transformer like Roberta and BERT, but they compute attention separately on, I believe, on the token embeddings and on the position embedding. So they have disentangled attention, as they call it. Um, so more fine-grained attention that works better, and it really works better. So I started with Roberta, created my baseline, so end-to-end, being able to publish, and I had good result, but not competitive. And then I saw everybody was using dBERTA, so I updated um, my baseline with dBERTA. and then I worked on improving one model. What people tend to do in Kaggle, they, they, they want to get the best score as fast as possible. So when they have a baseline, they start assembling tons of models. They will use tricks that always work, like pseudo labeling. In this competition, we had 10 times more data without the annotations. So what you've shown, we had the notes, but without the exact place where the answer were. And when you have unlabeled data like this, you can use semi-supervised learning. And the one that we all use is called Pseudo Labeling on Kaggle. And in academia, it's called Noisy Student. But it's the same idea. You train a model where you have the ground truth, and then you use that model to make predictions on the rest of the data, and you use the prediction as new labels. And then you train a second model on that, the student model. And usually the student is better than a teacher. That's well, that's how you get good results. So I knew that pseudo labeling would help. I knew that ensembling would help, but I stick to improving a single model. So on the leaderboard, people were climbing, and I was sure they were using pseudo labeling and ensembling and all sorts of tricks. And I was trying to improve my score just with a single model. And I have the best single model of the competition by far, really by far. My best single model scores 0.893, and I think the best model reported by teams scored 0.891 or something like that. So it's really, I have the best single model, and that's always what I try to do in competitions. And in the last 2 weeks, I do pseudo labeling, ensembling things that move the score up. There are no brainers. There is no point, or maybe I did it once earlier just to check it works. But I didn't retrain using pseudo labeling, and I did not submit much ensembles until the last week.
Do you usually always focus on having a good single model? Because
Yes,
noobs like,
always,
okay,
always,
I think people
always,
like,
always. I believe that's what has most value for the host anyway. And so, for instance, in Pathfinder competition, which has an image classification, no image regression, competition that happened earlier this year, I had the best single model again. I did not win because I entered late, but my model was the best.
you did finish really high on the leaderboard position that people like me still dream of
Yeah,
by
yeah.
themselves.
But you see, I submitted,
Three
three,
submissions.
so only one model.
uh, I was just curious because I'm always tempted, even when starting to just ensemble and get high on the leaderboard. It makes me happy that I'm above CPMP today for at least 2 days, and then he'll overtake me again. But still, for 2 days, I'm above him.
Yeah, but I understand that. But the public leaderboard is not the competition. That's something newcomers, they don't get it. And I understand it's addictive. I mean, you submit, you climb, and then someone beats you, so it's like racing. But the real race happens in the private leaderboard, and we don't see it. So I was like everybody. I was really looking at my rank in public notebook, and every morning when I was waking up, I was going, "Oh shit, I'm losing 5 ranks," and how come? And then I was say, "Oh, maybe I tweak a bit my ensembling," and I go up. But this is not the most productive way. So feedback from the leaderboard is useful. It's like a fold in cross validation. That's how I take it. But it's one fold. And it's also sanity check that you're not goofing and you don't have any bug in your code, but it's no more than that to me. So I'm happy when I climb the leaderboard, but I'm more happy when I improve my cross validation score. Nobody knows, but I'm more happy.
I often read your post, which was titled "Becoming Adults." It was slightly on a different topic,
Uh,
but it's. I think this is somewhat similar. As you can see, I bookmarked it, so I keep reading it.
yeah, I can comment on that. So there was a drama. I forgot the exact thing, but regularly we see people blowing a fuse on Kaggle, and they can be grandmaster, they can be newcomers, and the reason is it's like burnout. People invest a lot of time and invest a lot emotionally. And if you say something that they don't like, they can take it personally when it's not personal, or if the end result is not as good as they want, and they see someone else who maybe looks like they cheated or whatever the reason, you feel it's unfair, you can blow a fuse. And the reason is you're emotionally invested. And it happened to me because in a competition, so I was not a grandmaster yet. It was a private competition, so I think it was the last one. So Kaggle used to run maybe once a year or twice a year masters only competition. So you had to be a master or grandmaster to enter. And you could think, oh, competition like that are more competitive, but in fact they are not because you restrict who can compete. So you have less competition actually. Um, but anyway, so there was this master competition. It was for Caesars, the casino company. And I was like third on the leaderboard, and I submitted what I thought would be the top entry. And I got there very quickly, like in 2, 3 days. So I had the competition. And having a gold medal when you're not yet a grandmaster means a lot. And I never saw my score because they reset the competition. They reset the competition because there was a glitch in data preparation, a glitch I found and adjusted for, like the other top guys in the leaderboard. But they reset. And after the reset, I never could come back and I finished, I don't know, not in gold. And I was so upset. I wrote something saying I will not Kaggle anymore. Just telling the story. Sorry, someone is making noise.
No
Just
problem.
telling the story. Um, I feel the emotion coming back a bit. So I was so upset. I said, well, I won't say, well, I wrote something. I really was unhappy and oh, let me, sorry.
I don't think it's that loud.
For me, it is. All right. So,
Sorry.
uh, and I wrote, I will never Kaggle again and blah, blah, blah. I came back 3 months later. Um,
Was that your longest break on Kaggle? Because I
yes,
don't think I've seen you take a longer break.
no, I never. And even on vacation, I don't really take a break. So don't tell my wife. She's begging me so that I take vacations now. Anyway, and when I came back, I was no longer, something broke. And now I'm I take it as a professional activity in a way. Even before I joined NVIDIA, who are part-time professional on Kaggle, um, and it's better. I mean, but I see people they invest a lot. It's difficult. Kaggle is difficult for people who getting a gold medal, a solo gold. When you want to be grandmaster, you need a solo gold. It's really it's hard. It's difficult. So People get emotional. Can't blame them. I've been there as well. But at a point, um, if you can, you move to something where you're no longer emotional about Kaggle. You can still devote a lot of time and be motivated, but it's not the same. It's better, I believe.
Yeah. I wanted to mention, I'm sure you would know this Kagler, Kumar Shubham KS. And they had shared that all of these medals for them are just outside the gold zone. So by one position, they were really trying to become a grandmaster, and I'm sure it was like really frustrating for them.
Yeah, and I've been there as well. I think I have 3 or 4 gold miss, so first rank after gold. It's I don't care because I have enough golds, but when you want to be a grandmaster, missing gold by one, it's hard. I fully agree. Kaggle is difficult. I mean, someone wrote it's the most humbling experience. It was same for me. My first competition. So I have a PhD in machine learning from previous millennium. So it's not really relevant, but I thought, you will see what you will see, guys. Enter a competition. I'm like 100 in the public leaderboard at the end, out of 5,000. I say, not bad. And in the private leaderboard, I'm 2,000. So I dropped by almost 2,000 ranks. And then, so some people would leave, say Kaggle is bullshit. But I said, okay, I need to learn. There's something I missed, obviously. And
Then they will go on Twitter and start controversies that people just ensemble or Kaggle, they don't do anything useful. That's why I always dig into why are you using a single model, because people like CPMP and many other Kagglers really focus on that. And with the inference only competition and Bertlef is train plus inference only in kernels, it's really restricted. And there's like these upset people who just say, oh, Kaggle is useless. It doesn't help in real world. It's just ensembles.
no, it's what so what is true is that Kaggle, if you only do Kaggle, you're not a full data scientist because in real life you need to worry about constructing your training data set. So you need to collect data, you need to curate it, you need to label it, you need to make sure it's representative and not biased. So a lot of stuff. And once you've trained a model, you must put it in production in a business process or whatever use you have for it. So you have to work with IT people, you have to work with business to convince them that model prediction are useful. You must think about how the prediction are used. So there is a lot of things before and after modeling that Kaggle does not touch. So people criticizing Kaggle that way, it's fair. But for the part covered by Kaggle, which is feature engineering, data preparation, modeling, model selection, it's the same as in the real world. There is no, so it's one of the best way to learn how to do it correctly.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing your views. Now, coming to your solution, I'll share the write up. And again, to anyone watching live or watching later, just under the like button, the first link is to the solution. And if you scroll, you can also find the inference notebook where CPMP have shared their second position winning inference notebook. So you can please do check those out. We'll only go through the highlights in this, but do read it. So I'll just go through the highlights that were interesting to me, but please point out any things that you want to. I was quite curious of how what was your first intuition when you saw the label unlabeled data was more than
Uh,
labeled data?
Pseudo labeling would be key. So what I explained before, train a model on the label data and then use a model prediction as labels for the unlabeled data. And then you train a second model, you have 10 times more data for training the second model. So yeah, that
Okay.
was a pseudo labeling competition.
Okay. And how much time do you spend? Do you do your own EDA? Do you refer to popular notebooks, or do you
I
not
don't.
look at?
I didn't look at any public notebook in that competition.
Okay. So,
And there is one piece. There is one piece of code I used, which I mentioned, a function by Theo Viel, but other than that, I didn't look.
okay.
The other thing, the training data was small. Um, so even if we take model that run on a single GPU, like Liberta large, these are really big transformers, and they learn very well. They learn too well, so it's very easy to overfit. So my first thinking was it's pseudo labeling. The second one was overfitting will be so avoiding overfitting will be the key.
Okay. So, continuing further, you found out that there were some inconsistencies by the labelers, so you did account for that, and you decided to convert everything to lowercase here to make it uniform.
Yeah, because some notes were in uppercase, all uppercase, and some were lowercase, some were mixed. So just using lowercase did improve the model cross validation.
When you're trying these ideas, do you like focus on pre-processing first, or for like the baseline, do you just train a model and do you spend
Um,
time first?
you're showing my pre-processing function, so
Yeah.
it's complex. Huh?
I
No,
was just curious.
I see people doing a lot of pre-processing, fixing annotation errors, or they have 3 page long post-processing. Your model should learn this thing. So uh, no, I'm not. It was different, but since transformers, since BERT and GPT, it's a revolution. The less pre-processing you do, the better in general.
Sorry, I always get all of these questions around how do you do this? How does CPMP do this? And I keep deviating from main topic.
Oh no, in my write-up, I try to explain why I
Yeah.
use this and that. So, and it's always the same. I make a hypothesis. Then, for instance, I made the hypothesis that casing, lower or uppercase, is useless, is not meaningful. Because I could not find, looking at example, I could not find reason why some text was uppercase, some was lowercase. So that's a hypothesis. I test it. What if I put everything lowercase? I run the experiment, meaning I train a model, and I look at the cross validation score and compare to the baseline. And it was better, significantly. Then it becomes a new baseline. And that's how I work. I test one thing at a time.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Um, the second thing you pointed out, you've already spoken about this, the function that you expanded by Theovial on.
Yeah,
You
so Theo, so I never used Diberta before that competition. So I read in the forum. So I don't use public notebooks, but I read the forum. And in the forum, it was said, and that was a lesson from the previous feedback competition, that Diberta tokenizer uh, does not handle white space separately. So in fact, here we are so if a word is preceded by a space, then the space belongs to the first token of the word. And so for people not familiar, all these models work on tokens. So there is a preprocessor called a tokenizer that transforms the input text in a series of numbers. And each number represents a token. So for instance, space followed by on, is a token. So if in the input text you have a space on, then it will be replaced by the token for these three characters. There is another token for on without a space before. And the problem with tokens is that sometimes the boundary, so the start or the end of the text we are asked to identify, is within a token. And if it's within a token, the model cannot learn it. It can learn if the token is part of the text or if the token is not part of the text. But learning that the token is half part of the text is just not possible. So that's why we have to post-process. And Théoviel shown that by removing spaces that are before the text, he improved the score because the boundaries never include a space at the start, but the tokens do. So that's what he shared.
Thanks for clarifying that. CPMP, we might go 20 minutes over the scheduled time. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll try to wrap up faster. I always ask so many questions, and sorry, I take longer than
I
scheduled.
speak a lot too. So
So you accounted for the spacing and you shared the theory here. So I'll continue further. The third case, as you mentioned in your write-up, is accounting for substrings, and there were some spaces. So for the
yeah, this
tokenizer,
example, I believe I was the only one, but you have in the text, for instance, 17-year-old male. It is written 17YOM, so 17-year-old male. And in fact, you have a feature about age, so you should have the 17-year-old as part of the response. Or another feature is about gender, male, and it should only have the M. So the boundary is in the OM, but it's within a token. So we have to split in post-processing depending on the feature.
okay, awesome. So that I believe covers the pre-processing. Again, I'm trying to highlight the portions and share the story through CPMP. Please read the solution for the exact details. CPMP has also shared the key code functions there, and you can then do your homework and replicate. It'll take a long time, but you should try it. Um, After that, you share the architectures, and you've already shared by use Tiberta and Tiberta large. So do you start with the smaller version first and then scale up, or is there any
Yeah,
approach?
yeah. So my first work was with Distill Roberta. So as I said, Roberta was my workhorse, and for many people. And there is a smaller version created by Hugging Face called Distill Roberta, which trains much faster. It's not as good, but it's good enough to test IDs. So I was running Distill Roberta for quite a while internally. Then once I had a lot of what I described in place, I moved to Roberta, submitted. So I submitted Distill Roberta to check it was okay. Then Roberta, it was much better, but not competitive. Then I switched to Diberta, and then I started to be competitive. And then I stick to Diberta because at a point you cannot tuning for one model does not. Then it was really grabbing the last few digits, and there you should tune the model you will use in the end.
Got it. Um, so then you share some regularization tricks. I'll skip the first one because it was discussed quite heavily
Mm.
in the feedback competition. Could you please clarify this? So when you say using a linear combination of hidden states,
Yeah, so um, I did not invent it. I saw it in some papers. I saw it used by Christophe Dieter as well before. So transformers, they have layers. It's like a sandwich, a club sandwich, And each slice is an attention layer followed by uh, a linear MLP. And after each slice, you have an embedding, so a vector for each token. These embeddings are called hidden state. In Liberta, you have 24 slices like this. So you, for token starts with one embedding, one vector, and then the vector is updated 24 times. So you have 24 vectors throughout the model when you compute the forward pass. These are called hidden state, and usually people take the last one, the last hidden state, and it is used as input to a classifier, so a linear layer that predicts the logits for your classification. But you can access in Hugging Face API, you can get all the hidden layers. So what I did is I created a vector of weights that are applied to the layers and some, so a weighted sum of the hidden states. And it means it's as if adding skip connection in the transformer. Skip connection help in visual in visual models, and they help here a bit as well. But obviously, the last hidden space is the most important. So these weights are not. I don't average with fixed weights, so I made the weights learnable. I didn't check the values of the weight in the end, but I wouldn't be surprised that the weight for the last hidden state is more important by far.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that as well. So for the next part, I had a few questions and then I decided to scroll a bit and people had asked similar questions and all of them were answered by CPMP. So I'll skip through model training if anyone is curious. I would just suggest reading through this, all of this that makes.
There is not much for training except for pseudo labeling. The rest is, well, pseudo labeling is quite standard on Kaggle. The one thing that I did was different is I pre-trained the model. So I said this is question answering. No, so that was in the training. I started with pre-training the model on Squad V2. That's the first sentence. So Squad V2 is a data set of question answers from Stanford, I believe, Stanford University. So I pre-trained Liberta models on it, and then use a pre-trained model in the competition. This really improved.
I was just trying to find this link real fast.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the comments you had answered in the chai competition, I believe people had shared how to use this. So
Yeah,
that's
the
where you
winner
found
of
it.
Chai competition did the same. So maybe that's where I took the idea, and I don't remember.
Okay. I had interviewed Darek Kwechek, who won the competition. So for the audience, if you have the time, please, you can find those tricks there. Um, Continuing further, so after this, you shared the adversarial training tricks. And again, I'm
So
still reading.
of time, but so my model with adversarial training would have finished my ensemble would have finished second as well, but it was not as good as the one with pseudo labeling.
Okay. Um, any tricks you want to highlight in this part? I'm still reading through the
You
papers
have
and
to read the papers because it's frankly there is no way. So people who don't like math, sorry guys, here you need to understand how backpropagation works and because the idea is for adversarial training, it started in image classification.
Mhm.
The idea is for each sample, you compute the gradient of the loss. That's what you do usually, but you don't stop here. Then you create another sample moving in the direction of the gradient. So you move your sample in the direction that make it worse for your model. So you create a hard sample in a way. So that's supervised adversarial training. So that's where FGM and other methods come. And then there is a variant where you can also create samples even if you don't have a label. So there you create a sample so that the prediction for that sample is as different as possible as your sample. So you look for the sample that leads to the most different prediction, and you measure this difference using something called KL divergence. I don't have time to explain. I would need a whiteboard for it. And then same, you compute the gradient of the scale divergence. But the trick is for your sample, it's zero. So it's quite complex. You have
Okay.
to take the gradient a second time and blah, blah, blah. So I learned all of this. I read a lot of paper, spent 1 month full time. I think it's worth it. I hope it will pay off, but it's really something that you don't see much on Kaggle at this point.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. I got lost in the math and gave up on the papers, but now I'll try to read them again.
Yeah, it's we're lacking maybe there are tutorials. So the alternative is to pick code snippets, but as I said, none of them were applicable as is in the competition because they work with model with a softmax, so a classification. But here it's a binary classification, so sure you could use softmax by creating two target, blah blah. But anyway,
Okay.
so it's some work, yes.
I believe with that we've covered all the points I wanted to highlight in your solution. Anything else you want to highlight from here or things you want to mention?
What else? I would encourage people to read the other. So in this competition, in the top 20 teams, maybe 18 teams shared their solution, and the top 9 teams shared, if I remember well. I'm quite sure. So just read all of these. Ask questions. People answer questions. Look at the code when it's shared. So if you want to make progress, that's the best way to learn on Kaggle. The best way is you enter a competition, and when you're done, you look at what top teams did and try to understand why you didn't do it, how you could have done it. Try to understand. That's how, as I said, I started by reading the top solution from previous NLP competitions.
Hmm.
It's really the best way.
You already answered my question, which I always ask how to improve on Kaggle or what's your best advice. So you
Yeah,
already answered that.
and the problem is many people, they once results are known, they move to something else. And if they stay two more days, they would learn a lot more.
I'm still learning that on how not to give up and when to give up. So
Mm.
uh, there's one question from the audience that can be the last question. So Kishore says you're I'd rephrase it as you're an expert in optimization. Uh, what good resources do you suggest for people who want to learn that?
Uh, I would have loved to point you to my blog because on my blog I wrote several entries that show how to make Python code run faster than Julia. I got to top of Hacker News, but my blog was hosted on my previous employer site, and they erased it. So how to write efficient Python code? Yeah, I'm tempted to restart a blog because these kind of things, the answer exists. If it exists in the documentation of package like Numba, or it exists somewhere, but it's not in a way consumable by newcomers. I know it's hard. That's what when I was blogging, I was trying. And that's what Chris does in Kaggle Forum. He presents information that experienced Kagglers know, but in a way accessible by all, and that's very popular. So I'm afraid I don't have a real good answer. The only thing is on the method. Don't stop. Well, the first thing of a good code is that it runs correctly. So your first goal should be to get your code to run correctly, to compute what it has to compute. Once you're there, you can try to see if you use different ways. It's like improving a model. Change your code, see if it runs better, faster. If so, then you've learned something. If not, you've also learned that your way is faster than the alternative. No, but an experience always teaches you something. So experiment. So for pandas, people use pandas. Uh, don't use apply. If I have one advice, never ever use apply. The second point is don't use loops, like in C. Don't use C style loops on pandas. Never. If you really want to use loops, turn your pandas data frame into an NumPy array and use Numba, Numba. So just Google it. There you can write uh, C style loops, and Numba will compile them, and your code will run nearly as fast as C code. So no kidding. But loops on pandas data frames, no. Apply, no. These two are forbidden.
Um, Hopefully, all of us can slowly improve from all of these tricks.
And the last point, you can also move to QDF. So here a little ad for NVIDIA. We have GPU-based equivalent to pandas called QDF. It's part of Rapid, so it's used more and more in Kaggle because it's much faster as well. But it's I'm cheating. It's not about writing faster code. It's using a faster backend. Um, but yeah, writing fast code, it's like training good models. Experiment, learn from experimentation.
Grandmaster Jeepa, also one of the Kaggle legends, had shared this tweet, which CPMP pointed out. This was quite popular this week in the community, so consider using CUDF.
Mm.
Maybe I can convince the audience to comment to please bring back CPMP's blog. And if we can get more than, I don't know, 10, 20 comments, I will help CPMP rehost his blog. Let's do that. I've never asked anyone to subscribe. If we get more than 10 comments, I will help CPMP recreate his blog, and then all of us can learn. Just 10 comments, everyone.
Good.
Uh, sorry to go on a tangent. I'll wrap up here.
Thank
Again,
you for hosting me. That was very pleasant, as usual. Guys, try to, one reason to do well on Kaggle is to be hosted by Sanyam. So
you're being too kind. I'll, before wrapping up, I'll point out your profile so people can find you and learn from you. Uh, CPMP is Jean-Francois' username on Kaggle. And if you go there, you can find their Twitter profile where they're very active. Their Twitter handle is JF Puget. I'll also point that out in the chat. Please follow him there as well. Um, any other platforms you want to highlight apart from?
no, it's always it's a. I don't know how people can be active on more than one social media. Some people are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, what have you. I don't know. It's like competition for me. I do one, I can't do two.
Okay, awesome. I'll wrap up now. CPMP, thank you so much for being so kind with your time to me always and sharing all of these insights with me and the community. So thank you for
Thank
joining me
you.
again.
Thank you very much.
And thanks everyone for watching. I'll end the live stream here.